Hello and welcome to Tippcast again this week with myself, Shane Stapleton. We're back after a couple of weeks break. Shane Brophy is away this week. He's off sunning himself somewhere, I'm sure. So I'm joined by Denis Kelly, who obviously knows the game inside out, to talk all about the final round of the Tipperary Club Hurling Championship. How are things with you, Denis? Keeping well?
Not bad, Shane. Thanks very much.
Yeah. It's an exciting weekend of club hurling to come because, I mean, for example, in the group that contains Borris Drum and Thurles Stars, at least one big gun is going to fall.
Yeah, it's huge now this weekend. You know, looking through the fixtures there's a lot of juicy fixtures at all levels. And, you know, as you say, some of the bigger teams are going to be gone. And it's very early. I suppose we're used to playing off these matches maybe after post-September, maybe after All Irelands and things. So, like, you know, you're still just at the start of September now. And, you know, some lads will be finished hurling until next January or February, I suppose.
Yeah. I suppose just a little aside before we get fully into the group stages is Colin O'Riordan has had to retire from the AFL due to a hip injury, which is hugely disappointing. A player of such promise, only 26 years of age, and played 34 games down there since moving in October 2015. Came back and won that Munster title with Tipperary. That's huge disappointment for him because he's a player of such promise.
Yeah, exactly. Look, he put in such a commitment there to go over, and you know we had him in St. Columkills and Templemore talking to young lads and telling them how he was getting on, and he was really enjoying it over there, and you know was putting every ounce he had into it, and like he does with every sport he had played up to now. So it's hugely disappointing. We're not sure yet will he be able to come back and maybe offer Tipperary footballers a helping hand in the years to come. Not sure at the moment, but definitely fierce disappointing for himself and his family. You know, to hear that news during the week.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the first game we're going to talk about is the Group 1 refixed clash between Clonoulty and Killerwan. In many ways, this is the game that probably nobody really even wants to play because of what happened with Dylan Quirk when the game had to be abandoned. But I suppose for the club championship to continue on, the fixture does have to be fulfilled, and both teams can, of course, go through as well. Nina are already through, and they, of course, won the North, so there was no problem for them anyway. My Borris are out. But it's going to be a bit of an emotional one, and we know that there's a collection at this game with the proceeds going to the Order of Malta, which is a nice touch. But it's going to be a tough one for the players.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be very tough. You know, that was an awful tragedy that happened, and you know, people are still getting over it, and lads that would have played with him still, you know, some of them had the effects of having to play even 2 weeks later. It was tough on them. So this is a big one. You know, I suppose both teams can go through. So look, they'll have to just concentrate on getting some sort of a performance and getting the result they need. But it definitely will be, you know, emotionally fueled this weekend.
Yeah, like I suppose the players just have to. It's hard to know what to even say in the dressing room before a game like this. There's obviously no guide for what you do here. But like if you were managing here, do you try and just get the minds focused on a job only, and afterwards maybe have some emotive words if that's what you need to do?
Yeah, I think so. Look at if you can keep the emotion out of it as much as possible, just focus maybe on the game and just getting a result. And you know, everyone knows what happened 4 weeks ago now, I suppose, at this stage, and it hit every club across the county and probably across the country as well. So you know, I think just maybe getting your few instructions in, getting tactics right, and just going for that way, and trying to avoid the emotional side of it as much as possible. That'll happen anyway, but you know, it's important for the two clubs. I suppose Clonoulty have the West to fall back on, whereas Killerwan are maybe looking for, you know, if they're beaten, they're gone. So Nina are sitting pretty there. They're gone through anyway as it is. So it's a big game for both, and you know what has gone on then makes it even bigger and tougher on players involved.
Yeah, and I suppose the last day out for Killerwan to lose by 3-19 to 117 against Nina. Nina scored 2-2 in the last 8 minutes there, and of course there was Jake Morris's brilliant goal there. But not only did they lose the game, but Craig Morgan, I should say, has a cruciate injury as well. So it's been a tough couple of weeks for Killerwan.
It has been very tough, and you know, in that game I was covering it there with the Tip GA, and it was in the melting pot really up to the last maybe 10 minutes or even, you know, in or thereabouts. It was really tough on Killerwan to lose Craig Morgan, but they actually responded well after his loss in that game and were hurling pretty well. But just Lena had a purple patch where they banged in, maybe Jake Morris got 2-2, and Tommy Heffernan was unstoppable inside line. So after that, it was game over. So I'd say there was a lot of soul searching done in Killer One and licking of wounds, because that was a match they looked like they were well in and well up for, and then just fell away towards the end. So they'll be looking at, I suppose, the video and trying to figure out where they went wrong. And, they'll be coming strong. They'll need a result. But with Craig Morgan out for the rest of the year, it's tough on them now. Their panel is tight as it is. And, a leader like that is a huge blow for them.
Yeah, it's also a bit of a blow to Liam Cahill, because Barry Heffernan's already done a cruise ship. Now Craig Morgan, that's probably 2 of his back 6 that potentially could be gone for maybe the entire year, but certainly part of next season.
Yeah, and if you add in Dylan Quirk's name to that as well, that's 3 of the back 6, so it is really tough. It's like, Colin Bonner was dealt a tough hand, and now it seems to be happening again. But, at least they have time. They kind of get their heads around it and look for other talent. And there's lots of talent on show in the club scene. So they'll be looking at other guys, getting them in there, getting them ready to go. And I'm sure they have an idea in their heads already who they're going to be bringing in.
Yeah, and like in terms of Nina, where do you think, how do you feel that they're going to be? Obviously, they're going to be waiting a couple of weeks at this stage, but they weren't great against McCarthy Burris, obviously. But other than that, they won the North, and they've got a couple of results with 3 points.
Yeah, and again, look, to win the North, they played a very good second half against Killadang. And, some of the people at the match, the North final, could have probably thought about going home at half time. And then they just come out and blitzed it, with a man down and everything else. So they've been flaky, I suppose. They've shown great patches, but haven't done it consistently enough. The McCarthy result was a real surprise one, even though McCarthy, we know, have lots of fine hurlers out there. But they're still a bit young, and, that's a tough group. But then they bounced back and got that huge result. So if they click on any given day, and we've seen it before, they knocked Sayers out a few years ago as well in the stadium. If they click on a given day, they're very, very dangerous. But if they're a little bit off colour, then, they could be put to the sword by any of the teams left. But, they'll be dangerous going into the quarterfinals.
Absolutely. And that's Group 1. So to talk about Group 2 then, Borrisley against Drummond and the other game is going to be between Templederry and Thurles Sarsfields. But the second day out, well, obviously Borrisley were beaten well by Sars in the first game. They need a huge win to progress here. Obviously did all right against Templederry, winning 29 points to 23, even though Templederry had a late run there. But when you look at the scoring difference here, Drum are plus 18 in terms of points, and Borrisley are minus 6. So you're looking at Borrisley needing a huge victory to progress here, and it just seems a little bit unlikely given how well Drum are playing.
Yeah, it is hard to see it at the minute. You're talking about maybe a 13-point win for Borrisley, but like looking at Templederry the last day, they're not out of it yet either. They'll be fighting for their lives if they can sneak a win in their game against Thurles. Again, it's an outside chance, and the bookies will probably give you good odds on that. But there's nothing given on the last day of the championship. You don't know what way it's going to go. But Burris, I suppose, from their point of view, they'll have to worry about getting a win first, because there's no point in thinking about score differences or anything else. A win is vital, and then they can worry about the score difference after. It mightn't come into it if Templederry did their neighbours a favour. As unlikely as it seems. You never know. Sars will be disappointed with their performance the last day. They were, a good bit below par. Now, saying that, Drummond Inch are flying at the minute. They have 2 great wins under their belt, and they look like they're playing to a system that they all understand this year. So, they're starting to be one of the favourites in the championship. It's a wide open championship, but every day the thing changes. But definitely, Drum have been one of the teams of the championship so far.
What do you think has changed for Drum this year? I mean, just again about their game against Sars, Jamie Maloney scored 2 goals in the second half. John Campion was brilliant, scoring 4 points from midfield in the first half alone. The half back line of Podge Campion, Fintan Purcell and Steve Nolan all played well. And they've another player stepping up. But to you, what's been the change with them?
Yeah, well, look at the half back line, as you mentioned there, is a big change. Like Stevie Nolan would have played a lot of his hurling midfield or half forward line. Now he's rampaging out of defence from short puck outs, and he has speed to add to that. and he's creating a serious amount of attacks. And then Fintan Purcell is flying as well there. He played underage with Tipperary, and he kind of had stalled maybe for a year or two, but he's now flying it. So, and throw Podge Campion into it then. He had a great run with Our Ladies when he was in there, playing Harty Cup, as a Harty Cup under his belt. Then again, maybe didn't just fulfill his potential there for a year or two, but now he's flying as well. So that's their launch pad, really, that strong half back line. And, there's not much passing through them, and they're creating a lot of scoring chances then up front. Like Seamus the last day chipped in with his frees, but, he probably disappointed by his own standards not to contribute from play. But there's other players stepping up to the mark up front as well. So, they have a nice balance between youth and experience, and they seem to have them placed in the right positions this year. And, they seem like a really united bunch as well. I know Brian Boyle and Paul Collins are over them, and they're two, staunch drum and inch people. And, they seem to have the bit between their teeth, and everything is going right for them at the minute.
So in terms of like the balance of the Burris team and the way that they're playing, and, they're going to need a massive performance here. Moving your own son, Jerry Kelly, back down the field. Brendan, named midfield the last day, got 16 points, 14 of them from placed balls. Dan McCormick then centre forward. Is it working a little bit better? Is the balance of like letting the ball go long versus going short, is it starting to improve a little bit?
Yeah, there was definitely glimpses of that against Temple-Derry. I suppose the lads will be disappointed they let maybe a few points slip at the end, but overall you'd have to be positive coming out of it, compared to the previous day when they probably were just off the boil, and you'll have a day like that every so often, and they just didn't really feature. So no, it seemed to have a better structure to it. Jerry's gone back at 6, and you've Dan and Brendan interchanging between 11 and the middle of the field. So it definitely has, maybe you're losing a little bit up front, but at the same time, it gives them they seem to have a nice balance there, and they have a couple of options maybe coming back off the bench as well. But they're going to need an almighty performance at the weekend to get their win first, as we said, and then maybe hope to the other results go their way or score difference goes their way. But it is at the moment hard to see Drum and Inch shipping a big loss. But you just don't know when games take a life of their own. And this team, if anything, they have experience in the bag from the way they ground out wins the year they made that run all the way to the All-Ireland. So they have that in the bag. The majority of them players are there, and some of them maybe showed a little bit of spark the last day. And if they could show a little bit more inside in Semple Stadium, then maybe they have a chance.
Yeah, a lot of those players would have gone to school together in the last couple of years. Very tight games, like you said. The year the All-Ireland run, Bursley won by 3 points, I think, down in Holy Cross, but it was a very close game. And then there was obviously the penalty shootout then not so long ago either. So neck on the block. I think it's highly, highly unlikely Bursley are going to get through here. I wouldn't be backing it at all. And Drum's form is, it's hard to ignore at the moment. But the other game, Temple-Derry against Thurles Sarsfields, as you're saying, the bookies will be given a big price on Temple-Derry here. But I suppose the dismissal of Éanna Murray on 52 minutes definitely hurt Temple-Derry against Burris, and they were never give up late on. But I suppose the injury profile to SARS now, Ronan Maher, Michael Cahill, Stephen Cahill, Billy McCarthy, they'd all be kind of doubts at this stage or are definitely out. So I don't know, you'd still be favouring Thurles, but can you make any sort of a case for Temple-Derry?
Yeah, you'd be favouring Thurles, but like you look at it there, that's the heart of a team. If Tipperary lost those players in their pomp, you'd struggle big time to fill their spots as well. So like you're talking about a club team here, right? They have a lot of resources in there, but it takes lads a while to get to know each other's play and settle, as well. So young Armstrong there, he's playing centre back and he's a fine young player, but it's going to take him a while to settle in at senior level. He's only moved up. So Temple-Derry for me, like the last day against Borrisoleigh, it looked like the game was up, but they still stayed fighting to the bitter end, and they have some lovely players like Shawnee Ryan is a real class act. Boris found it hard to pin him down the last day, and we've seen him for over the last few years. They were missing Adrian Ryan to the last day, so if they could get him back for the next day, he'd be a bit of a push on as well, because he's one of their main men up front. But the one thing you can say about Temple-Derry, they won't lie down, but it is you'd be expecting a kick from SARS after the last day. Mark Dowling and his charges on the sideline weren't one bit impressed the way they were they went, and they don't like losing to anyone, but especially to Drum and Inch, because there is a nice rivalry there. So you'd be expecting a kick out of them, and a win for them will more than likely put them through.
Yeah, and David Corbett did a great job of man marking Seamus Callinan the last day. Do you think he could have a man marking job in this game? Maybe Sean Ryan. I know he's a different size profile, but maybe him, maybe even Garrod Ryan if they want to try and stop a talisman.
Yeah, exactly. He could, and he tends to play on the half back line. So but he has moved around, so he could be detailed with that. After it's no mean feat keeping Shamley scoreless from play. So they might look at that and try him on Shawnee this time round. But I suppose they need to get their main structure right. And the last day they just didn't seem to function. Whatever, especially around the middle of the field, they were very loose and lethargic. And they're going to need to get that area right, because like John Campion the last day, he really went to town there in the first half. He had a lot of damage done, and they didn't seem to have any answer to him. So they'll need to get that right around the middle third there if they're going to have a chance down the line.
And speaking of John Campion, is it too early to be thinking that he could step up and be thrown in straight away with Tipperary next year? He was obviously very impressive with the 20s.
Yeah, he definitely could get it. He'd be one that you'd be looking at bringing in anyway to the panel. You see players coming in to the fold. It takes them a year or two to get their feet generally, unless they're exceptional players. So, but he'd be one you'd like to see maybe getting the nod to come in, get the S&C under his belt and see how he go. But he has great heart and fighting, fight about him. And definitely he'd be probably an addition. But you just don't know how players will take to the inter-county game. But at the moment, going on form, he's one of the form players.
Yeah, and another player worth mentioning is in Group 3, like Brian O'Mara, in terms of like future with Tipperary. He was away this summer, but Liam Cahill was there watching him play the last day out against Toom, and apparently very, very impressive. So that'll kind of further the cause to get him back in the Tip shirt.
Yeah, there's an outcry around Tip now. I suppose him leaving when he was really wanted. He's nearly more. There's people calling out for him nearly more than ever now. So yeah, definitely Brian, if he's available, he'll definitely slot straight in there, and he's a fine hurler, and he could slot into. We'll be short on backs this coming year, and he'll have while he hasn't played inter-county senior, he has a lot of experience under his belt. Winning the Fitzgibbon Cup with UL and that. So you'd expect him to slot in if he's available. And again, Holy Cross, they're under pressure in this group because they have no points on board, and then Mullinahone, they're not easy beat either. They have only 1 point, but still there's a possibility for them if they could beat Holy Cross, and by enough on the scoreboard, they could have a chance of going through. Now it's an outside chance, but still they have a chance.
Yeah. So as you said, Holy Cross, Ballycahill facing into relegation if they don't win here. And I suppose just Tumivara in their form, I think it was like 7 points to 1 in the last 10 minutes of that game against Holy Cross. Were you impressed by what you saw?
Yeah, they finished very strong. And, they finished both halves very strong. In the first half especially, they were really struggling in the first half maybe at times. But they found the goals required, and they got... they went in maybe, was it level or a point down at half time, when really Holy Cross had done a lot of the hurling. And that was probably the difference. Holy Cross were probably disappointed the goals they gave away. They were soft. But Toom did what they had to do, and then it finished very strong, and they'll be happy to where they're at now. Upper Church are flying in this group, so that'll be a tough test for Toom, So Toom are only +4 on the score difference, but yet they're a nice bit ahead of Mullinahone. So you'd expect them to pull through. But last year, they'll be taking nothing for granted. They got caught on the hop last year with Mullinahone, suffering a big defeat to Mullinahone. So they can't really take that for granted. They'll have to do their best to get a win over Upper Church, or at least a draw, and get through, because you never know what will happen on the other side.
Yeah, David Young is still a key man. He scored 1 goal and set up another the last day.
Yeah, he's still very clever. He has has all the smarts, and he's able to find that bit of space, and he's able to find lads in space, and he's still going well. He mightn't outrun anyone, but he's using his head a lot more, and he's still very effective for Toom.
Yeah, and some of the other lads who were key the last day against Holy Cross, like Rory Breslan made a penalty save, Jack Delaney with 5 points from play, Mark McCarthy's free taking was important. Like, there's a lot of lads stepping up for Toom.
There is, yeah. Like, you look at Rory Burslan, he's settled in now to the goalie position. Like the goalie position was a tricky one there for Toon for a few years that were chopping and changing, but he seems to have settled in really well there. And, he's a huge puck out as well, which is, sometimes the short puck out can be overused, but definitely with his prowess on the long puck outs, it's a weapon as well if you can land the ball at the opposition 14-yard line. So that's one they can use. Again, Robbie Kirk has settled in well at centre back there, and he's hurling well. And Jack Delaney is motoring very well up front, and he's probably one that might be on the radar as well. I know in the Miller Shield last year, he had a really good game the last game, but maybe it came too late for him. So he's another one that he's gone very physical and he's hurling well. And he's really leading that Toom attack. And then Mark McCarthy is chipping in with a few frees, and he's linking up play nicely too. So they have a nice blend there of players. And, again, this is a tight game to call. You have James McGrath on the from Tumivera on the Upper Church side. He's coaching them this year with Liam Dunphy. So that'll add a little bit of spice to the game as well. And he's near neighbour Pat King on the other sideline. So there could be a bit of fireworks there yet in that game.
Yeah, no doubt there's been a bit of crack locally about that. Just a further question about Jack Delaney. There are some games where he really steps up and you think, geez, this lad has inter-county quality. What do you think it'll take for him to take that next step to that top level?
Yeah, I suppose he hasn't got a chance yet. He'd been in and out on the fringes, but hasn't got a full run at training with Tip for let's say 12 months and working his way up. Consistency, I suppose, will be the key for Jack. That he scored 5 the last day from play, a great display. Now he needs to put 4 or 5 more on the board the next day, and really, people start turning heads then and asking questions. So that's consistency, I suppose, will be the key for Jack. But look at he has all the qualities required if he can get that consistency to his game.
Absolutely. Also, impressed in the last day for Toom were Andrew Ryan and Liam Ryan in the backs, and subs Darren Delaney and Adam Hall were also very good. Jumping on to Group 4, so JK Brackens will face Killadangan. Funny enough, in this group, only one game has been won so far. Killadangan beaten Éire Óg and Acarty. But JK Brackens coming in with 2 draws from 2. Lockmore Castleiney with 2 draws from 2. Very, very tight group here, Dennis.
Yeah, it is really tight. The pair of draws really sets it up, for mouth-watering end, really. And, Killadangan have the 3 in the bag, so they're probably looking the best, placed at the minute. But they're taking on Brackens then, who they often find hard to beat. If you think back to 2 years ago, I think they drew in the stadium the year Killadangan won the county final for a finish. So, they won't be taking anything for granted with Brackens. And if Brackens can get a win there and Lockmore get a win, who knows what way it'll go down to score difference or that. You'll have probably Lockmore have 2, Brackens have 2. So, the 2 of them could possibly go through. Now, that'd be a big surprise because Killadangan, for a lot of people, are improving game on game, and you'd expect them to go through. And looking at the game, Lockmore versus Éire Óg and Acarty, that's one Lockmore would be probably expected to come out on top. Éire Óg and Acarty, again, are fighting for their lives, and they're, a hard team to play against and a hard team to beat. And I noted that they didn't play their football game last weekend. They took their bit of a fine for that. So, you know what they're eyeing up now, and it's a big performance against Lockmore. So Lockmore, again, aren't the team they were. They're missing John McGrath, and they seem to have coped better without some players in the football as opposed to the hurling. The hurling, they hasn't gone as smoothly. And Brackens were probably there. They had Lockmore there for the taking the last day, but just didn't quite finish it off. So this is really hard to call. I still think Killadangan plus maybe Lockmore could be the teams to come through. But again, I wouldn't be putting my neck on the block.
Yeah, so it's sort of an interesting one between Lockmore and Éire Óg in that it's kind of a relegation clash, but it's also win and you get through sort of clash at the same time. It's sort of an odd one for managers in terms of what they say to players going out.
It is, yeah. It's I suppose Lockmore they've been used to being at the top table, so they'll be concentrating on qualifying for the next round. They probably won't think too much about relegation. But for Éire Óg and Acarty, they've staved off relegation on a couple of occasions, and they know exactly what to do to get out of tricky situations. So it's hard to bet against them either. Now they got a bit of a defeat against Killadangan the last day, so if they're able to bounce back from that, they have a chance. But if not, they'll probably be facing down relegation again.
Yeah, and I'm not sure is there much word about Kieran Connolly. He didn't play against Brackets. I believe there's a bit of an injury, but they'd obviously love to have him available against their own.
Yeah, he'd be a big boost, because they have a few niggles and they have a little bit of inexperience on their team this year. But it's good that young lads are getting a chance, like Kieran McCormack there and, Conor McGrath. These lads are, they're doing quite well. But at the same time, it's hard to replace the likes of John McGrath and Kieran Connolly, and if he was even fit for 20 minutes, I'm sure to be a boost for them going forward.
And in terms of Killardangan, for some people, they'd still be right up there at the favourites. Willie Connors is obviously back playing again, and the team seems to be improving and gelling a bit more. And maybe the likes of Billy Seymour's had a few more games under his, and obviously training sessions under his belt. So do you feel that they're far away from getting back to their old selves?
No, they look like they're improving match on match. And like you look at Dickie McGrath, was back the last day, came in after 20 minutes, I think. He was back from the States. And, you have Hayes, I think, as well, is up front there. And when he's back from injury, I think, as well. And, when he's motoring, he's a real flyer. And they seem to be gelling a little bit better. They have subs as well, There's Chapati O'Meara's that was normally playing there. He was only came off the bench the last day for a few minutes. So they seem to have a little bit, their depth has improved as the championship has gone on. Because really, without them lads, they were flying in the North Championship up to the final. And even that, they looked like they were going to walk away with it. So, they took a little bit of a hit then, but they seem to have bounced back well. And, Darragh Egan is back there, I think, he's full on now involved, and that'll no doubt add to the sideline as well and the moves they make, So it is hard to see past them qualifying, and then we have to see what happens with the other three.
Yeah, and I suppose the final question then would be on JK Brackens. How far do you think they can go this year? Because like you said before, they've drawn with Killardangan in the past. They won the mid, beaten a drum side that's motoring very, very well. They have a lot of quality in the team. Andrew Ormond, Lyndon Fairbrother in the forwards, Shane Doyle knocking over the sidelines, and obviously the Cadells and so on. So there's a lot of quality in that team. But is it still a bit early for them in terms of like how far they can go and pushing for a county title, do you reckon?
Yeah, it might be a shade early for a county title, but, they showed in the mid-final they're not afraid of anyone. They have their system that they're playing, and they all know exactly their job. So, they're really well brought out there. And, Eamon Corcoran has a really good job done with him. And, they all seem to be pulling the same direction, which is important. But again, it is maybe a year or two too soon. Their panel depth maybe isn't there what they'd like, but there is a few good young lads coming through. And, you look through all the teams last weekend, JK Brackens features heavily from under 14 right up to under 16, so there's a fierce lot of talent coming through. But it could be a year, maybe or two too soon yet for them to challenge. But at the same time, they'll be a hard team to shake off.
It's a slightly shorter show today without Shane Brophy droning on there as well. But I suppose the final question I'd ask you before I finish up is just who would be, like, let's say, your top three in terms of who you reckon will be in the push for the county title this year?
Yeah, well, I suppose Killardangan have to be there. I have them in the top. Going on current form, that is, Drummond Inch then would be in the mix as well for me at the minute. But, things can change next weekend. It could change a lot. So they'll be the top two. Like Sards are chugging along at the minute. So they would be in early doors. You'd be talking about them. Lockmore, you'd never write them off because no matter what 15 they put out, they're able to get a performance when really the pressure is on. But, a county final this year for them could be a bit of a push. But looking through the rest of the groups, it's hard to call. Upper Church Drumban now have had a good run. But again, maybe they're not equipped to fully go all the way. So, but they'll top their group or near enough to it. Again, Toom are in the mix. But again, I think maybe they're just lacking one or two players to be right up there. But it's one of the most wide open championships we've had in a lot of years. Nina could be a dark horse. Like, I'm not I'm not making it up or anything, but there is a lot of teams in there. And like Nina, if you go through Nina and their forward line, the one thing when they get to Semple Stadium, if they perform, they have pace. Tommy Tommy Heffernan, Jake Morris, Mikey Heffernan. They've Paddy Murphy back now as an aerial threat, and they could be a real threat too. So probably if you put my neck on the line, I'd be talking maybe Killadangan, Drummond Inch, and maybe Nina in third place. But again, I could be proved drastically wrong after this weekend. But that's going on current form,
Yeah, to be fair, it is very difficult to call. It's pretty wide open. Well, look, brilliant to have you on, Dennis. Appreciate it, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Thanks very much, Shane.